chicken tonight with a bunch of chickens. Hey everyone. So today we've actually started to limit the chicks' food. They are getting visibly larger, and you can see that they're actually larger this evening than they were this afternoon. We have provided them with a few toys, like this little rolly ball here, and a perch, which we've attached to the top of the cage. Hang on, let me just show the perch. Here we go. That's the perch there. Well, they haven't really shown very much interest in either the rolly ball or the perch, other than to peck at the perch vaguely and to peck at the rolly ball occasionally. They do kick it around. We have realized and noticed that the chicks have started to dig around and wallow in hollows in the sawdust. Specifically, right behind the water fountain, you'll see that there's a little depression there where they've actually dug it out and they were rolling around in it. So we've decided that we'll try... No, the space is not too limited for toys. There's actually plenty of space in the chick brooder. It's just that they aren't showing too much interest in those specific kind of toys. But we have noticed that they have started trying to bath. So today, Igor is preparing the chicks a little sand bath, which will allow them to roll around and get rid of parasites and hopefully clean themselves up. I think it is something that they are very upset with. So while Igor prepares that bath, I thought I would show you the development of the chicks' wings, which have gotten quite large now. So we're gonna snag a little chicky wicky here. And we'll snag Square, because Square has the largest wings so far. I'm just trying to see where Square's gone. Here we are. Hello, Square. Square is the largest chick that we have here. And you can see that he's already got quite a lot of wing going on here. There's 3 layers of feathers right there. So the top feathers here, right at the tip here, are his primary feathers, and then followed by his secondary and tertiary feathers further in. Secondary here and tertiary over here. So the primary feathers are the feathers that are most used in flight. They're the ones that that the chicks rely on to get quite airborne and also help them with steering. So if we are planning to clip their wings, which we're not sure we're going to do yet, we will actually have to cut the primary feathers off one side of the wings, and that will unbalance the chickens sufficiently that they won't be able to flap around too much. I mean, not that they won't be able to flap around. They'll still be able to flap around, they just won't be able to get airborne. Actually, one thing we've noticed with the chicks at the moment is that they've actually started to attempt to jump out of the... Well, they're not really jumping out, but they have been jumping higher to reach the top, the rooftop of the brooder. And they're doing a good job of doing that. So I'm just going to go over to Igor to see what he's up to. Igor is currently in the midst of decaking the sand for the chicks' sand bath, but we're also filling the sand bath with diatomaceous earth. Now, diatomaceous earth is a kind of dirt. Well, not really dirt. It's sort of a special kind of earth that is like... yes, we are planning to clip their wings. We're not sure if we will or not, because part of it is that it might be inconvenient to have them flying around the pen and they may actually hurt themselves. But we'll see. It depends on whether or not they're particularly interested in flying around too much. Back to the thing. Diatomaceous earth is like very, very tiny knives. And they're really good for getting rid of things like lice and other bugs that may infest the chicken's body. It doesn't hurt the chicken itself because the chick's too big to be affected by these tiny knives, but the sharp edges of the diatomaceous earth are really good for cutting through parasites and the shells of small insects. So that's going to be added to their bath along with some play sand, which has been like washed and removed of dust, and also a little bit of rosemary for that nice fresh scent. So right now Igor is chopping the rosemary, and he's gotten some diatomaceous earth from outside, and the sand is still a bit hot. Oswald asks if chicken flight is a safety issue for us. Yes and no. We're more concerned about the chickens hurting themselves with their flight, because we are worried that they'll, given that they are actually not capable of flying very high due to their heavy weight, we're actually concerned that what they'll do is they'll flap themselves up and then basically dive bomb and faceplant into the ground and hurt themselves, which is apparently a risk with meat chicks. But we'll see. It depends on how well they're actually able to control their flight. The sand is hot because we've actually just baked it in the oven. And the reason being that when we bought the sand, it was wet. It was children's play sand, so it was sort of washed and then packaged still wet. The chicks themselves are not really capable of, not that they're not capable of getting wet, but it's not a good idea to allow them to roll around in wet sand, because that might actually penetrate the layers of fluff that they have here and make them sick. So what we're trying to do is sort of dry out the sand a little bit and kill off any extra bacteria that's in it. So we're waiting for the sand to cool down a little, and then we're gonna sort of mix it up together with the diatomaceous earth and other things. The chicks have actually gotten a lot more aggressive since the last time we saw them. You can see that the nameplate is a little worse for wear at the moment. They've been pecking at everything. They are very curious. They've been ripping up pretty much the whole universe. They've tried to pull down the wire to their chick plate brooder a couple times. So they are getting more sort of aggressive and active. We're pretty sure that at this point that we can confirm, I mean, there's no way to confirm the gender of these chicks, but we're pretty sure that little square here, who is the largest, is a rooster. And part of the reason why we've come to this conclusion is that we've seen him sort of run around trying to hurt the other chicks when it's time to go to bed. Oswald asks if they peck at each other. They do occasionally peck at each other, but it's more of a dominance display. I've noticed that they do get into little scuffles and fights, around the cage, just trying to show each other who's boss. Aurora here, I don't know if you can see her, little Aurora, out of there, is actually a little bit of a bully, because when she sees other chicks lying down on the ground and she's running around herself, she sometimes runs up to them and kicks them. And we know that she's doing this deliberately because she often winds her little foot back to kick them quite hard in the side. Isn't you a little bully? So the phrase pecking order actually comes from the way that chickens deal with each other, and that is, in order to establish who's the boss chicken and the rank of the chicken, they do actually peck at each other. Specifically, they peck each other on the top of the head, and that just goes to show who is boss and who isn't. So at the moment, the chick that seems to be at the top of the pecking order is Square, followed by Aurora. We haven't seen Aurora try to fight with Square yet, but it seems that Square just takes charge of her. I have had a couple of pecks at my fingers as well over the last couple of days, but only when I'm holding on to a chick that doesn't want it. The chickens are actually quite protective of each other, so if one of them is making a distress call and I'm holding on to that chick, the others will actually come to crowd round my hand and try and rescue that chick, usually by giving me a couple pecks or just trying to swarm around and confuse me. It's actually quite adorable, and I don't know if I'll be able to show that to you this evening because they seem to be quite relaxed at the moment. I'll show you a little dominance display here by Square where he's trying to face off against me, and you'll see that he's actually trying to make himself bigger than my finger. Oswald asks what the feeding hours for the chicks are. The chicks are fed now from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and we take the feed away at 9 p.m. and turn out the light. And part of that is trying to get them to get used to a cycle in which there is a specific daytime and a specific nighttime. So food comes in during the daytime, light comes in during the daytime, and then the food goes away at night and the light goes away at night. And this will actually get them used to going into the coop at night where there will not be any food, and get them into a cycle of that. Don't attack that. That's not for you to attack, silly one. The first day that we took the food away, which was actually the Sunday, they actually got... Okay. The first day when we took the food away, there was much crying and wailing and gnashing of beaks. And the chicks were actually really upset that the food was taken away. They actually sat around and cried for about 20 minutes until they realized that it was time to go to bed. After which they all huddled right underneath the chick plate and went to sleep. The second day that we took the food away, they cried for about 5 minutes and then stopped. So we're hoping that tonight, when the food goes away at 9 o'clock, that they'll actually not cry so much. Oswald asks if the feeding hours will change as they get older. No, we don't have any intentions to change the feeding hours, but when they get to an adult stage where they're outside, they will just get, their feeding hours will just be dictated by the dawn and the dusk, because I will be letting them out in the mornings where they can go and forage and get food, and then putting them back in the coop at night, is when lights out, so there won't be food inside the coop. So they'll just have to sort of get used to that cycle. So there will be a slight change dependent on how long the daylight hours are. Igor has just brought me the chick bath, so we'll see how well it goes. Here we go. There's a little bath, and let's see if we can't entice any of the chicks to come and bathe in it. Now, this is an old food bowl that used to belong to our pet rabbits, and we just filled it because it's now a little bit broken and no longer suitable for the rabbits to eat. Oswell asks if we'll release them to wander around the garden freely. No, we will not be releasing them around the garden. We actually have a sort of a gated shelter area for them to live in, and that will also be where they get to walk around and play. But it will still be a large enough area that it will basically be free range for them. Now, let's see if I can entice somebody to be interested in this bowl of dust. In you get. There we go. Peck, peck. I think we've got them eating some of the sand and the rosemary. I might just move the bowl a little further back so that it doesn't fly, so the sand doesn't fly out. Just gonna put a couple more chicks in. Whee! You get. I think they are just eating it, but there are rosemary pieces inside, which that might be what they're eating. But it won't be too bad for them to eat a bit of sand, because that will actually get them to that will get into their crop and help them to break up their food. Put a fistful of sand on their backs. I might try that. That does not seem to have done anything. Oh dear. I've just got one sandy chicken in there. Well, we'll see how they progress with the sand bath, because I have noticed that they have been making a bath of the sawdust. So hopefully they'll get into a point where they'll actually bath in that sand. I'm going to try to avoid putting anything on the chicks' heads because they have sensitive eyes and I don't want to actually hurt their eyes.
Should I just get some parsley?
Sure, why not? Igor has just suggested that we just put some parsley in for them to try, since we have also been considering learning how to teach them to forage. So it might be worth giving them some parsley to eat. So even if they don't necessarily learn how to bathe in this dust, they might actually learn how to eat grassy foods. We'd like to point out that chickens are not exactly the most intelligent creatures in the universe, so this is not exactly an unexpected result. It's okay if they eat the sand. It has been dedusted. It's not going to hurt them any. And it'll probably just go into their crop. Okay, it turns out that they're actually just eating all the rosemary bits in there, as well as some of the clumped up rocks.
Distraction.
Igor has provided us with some parsley as a distraction. What's this? Igor, I'm not sure your distraction is working. Oh wait, nope, one of them started to peck at it. I'm afraid, Igor, I don't think your distraction is going very well. You just... Nope. I thought maybe if I flipped one onto its back, but they're surprisingly difficult to flip onto their backs. We have made the bath too delicious. Probably we have. I think we might have put too much rosemary in the bath. Well, I'm gonna go wash. It's like lush soap. I'm gonna go wash my hands, and we'll see if any progress is made for the rest of this evening. But it does not look like the chicks are learning very much about personal hygiene at the moment. They are, however, learning a lot about new foods. I regret putting in the rosemary.
Live and learn. No, the chickens aren't learning much.
Igor, do you have a method of putting them onto their backs?
With great difficulty.
Well, at the very least, they seem to be quite interested in the parsley distraction. So there's always a plus.
Really chili pepper.
Tomorrow in the morning, we'll actually be mixing some of their pellets with yogurt in order to try and get them some probiotics in their stomachs. And part of the reason for this is that these chicks don't have a mama hen to follow around, so they don't actually have a they do probably have some gut bacteria, but they don't have a mama hen to actually give them the gut bacteria they might actually need. So we'll mix it up and then we'll give them that mixture. How Owlswell asks how we ensure that the chicks are getting enough food. It's actually quite simple. I calculate the amount of food that each chick needs to eat each day, and I actually put it in the food hopper. And that's how much food the chicks will get per day. I don't give them any more or any less. And they're actually fairly good at self-regulating in terms of allowing each other to eat, because it's really clear that they are all getting larger size-wise. They do have a pecking order, but because they are part of a whole flock, they will actually make sure that they all get something to eat. And that's part of like a chicken's behavior. The dominant chick will actually make sure that everyone has a fair chance. That's what the dominant chick's job is. And when you see chickens in a farm situation or in the wild, there's usually one rooster who's in charge, who makes sure that all the hens get enough food, enough water, and there may be cases where a very weak hen might get a little less than the others, but they will all definitely get fed. So you can see in this situation, they're all sort of fighting over the food, but they are changing guards, like different chickens are going in at different times. I am slightly concerned at the amount of sand these chicks are eating. Well, they need it in their gullets. So I'm gonna go off to wash my hands, like I said earlier, so I'll leave you guys to enjoy the chicks, and I'll just move the camera over so you get a better view of what's going on right down here. Oops. I've got the camera. Okay, the camera's not behaving, so give me a few seconds and let me just... There we go. So hopefully you'll be able to see what's going on. Enjoy! Oswald notes that the chicks may be enjoying the sand too much. I don't think that this will be a major problem. I doubt the chicks will replace their entire diet with sand. I think this is just the novelty factor at play for the moment. But if it does get to be a problem, I'm sure we'll be able to remove the sand bath before they go a little bit too crazy. of the reason why I suspect they're very excited about the sand in the sand bowl is that it's not shell grit and is therefore more of a dirt, mineral dirt than it is the shell grit they get. So they might actually be eating it because it might be a good replacement for the little grits that are in their crop because it's a finer mesh. But if you are concerned about them replacing their diet entirely with sand, a couple of them are actually at the feeder right now, nomming on something to eat. By the way, what you're seeing here is actually what happens in miniature in the mornings when they get their food. They do actually crowd each other out at the food bins and run around and change places. It's actually kind of cute. Oh dear. Well, they've only got 30 minutes left of live food, so I might actually take the sand bowl out. Come on, you lot. Out you get. You too. Oh. Yeah, it looks like my mistake was putting far too much rosemary in it. I might sieve this out and get some of the rosemary out. Yeah, they don't like to be lifted up too much. But they've returned to eating from their regular feed. So all's well that ends well. We might do that. Well, you can see now the futility of me trying to wash out their water carafe. As you can see, I literally washed that whole thing out earlier today and removed every last bit of sawdust from it. And now it's full of sawdust again. The food hopper is actually not stuck at all. It's just that I've put exactly how much food they eat in a day, and so they're coming down to the last of it. Well, I've looked online, and apparently there's no harm in them crowding around the bath like this. So I'm just going to let them do that. At the very least, it'll teach them to how to forage for food, which is also something they need to learn to do anyway. So I guess if they don't learn to bath, they at least learn to scratch. Might just move this a little bit further away from their sleeping spot, just so that they have more. So it's a little brighter as well for you guys to watch. Yeah, I've moved the grit balls because they were starting to knock it over. Well, we're getting close to that time where both sand and food should be removed from the cage. So, while this seems to have been a bit of a bust in terms of teaching the chicks how to bathe, at the very least they probably got some, I don't know, some grit for their crops. So maybe it did them a little bit of good. It turns out that my chicks eating play sand is not an unknown phenomenon. However, at this age, they may eat a little too much sand and fill their crops too much. So we'll take it out and we'll take their food out, and it's time for little chickens to go to bed. Come on, Ursula, out you get. So I'm going to take their food out shortly and turn out the light. You might still be able to hear them at the very least, so you might be able to hear if they do cry. I don't think they will cry tonight, but we'll see how it goes. So I don't know if you can hear that sort of long peeping sound that they're making. That's the sound they make when the sun goes out and they're a little bit upset. So that long piping that you hear is them calling to each other to get underneath the chick plate and get to sleep. now they're all pretty much underneath the chick plate brooder, and they're quieting down now. So thank you for spending some time with us here at Ragnar Rookery, and we hope that you enjoy Chicken Tonight tomorrow. Goodbye!